Singapore's parliament is readying itself for the rest of its term ahead of the next general election. It's entering a midterm break for the government to take stock of its work.
It will reconvene on the 10th of April with an address by President Halimah Yacob. Madam Halimah will outline the government's priorities, policies and programs for the rest of its 5-year term, which ends in 2025. The House will then debate on them. The recess, also known as a prorogue, allows Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's government time to map out its agenda and its policies.
Our reporter Lauren Ong joins us live now in the studios for more on this. Lauren, it's good to see you. It's about 2.5 years' work to review. Tell us, what the first session has accomplished.
Well, if we would have to look at the last parliamentary sitting, the COVID-19 white paper was debated. This sort of highlight what the government has done well and areas to improve on. And this sort of kind of closes the chapter of the past 2.5 years. This 14th parliament started its life in August 2020, and that was, if you recall, was during the height of the pandemic. So this parliament was really taken up to the task to help the country tide through the health crisis, bounce back from the pandemic, and more recently we've been seeing to prepare for future pandemics. So some examples of how this has been manifested. We have the $100 billion that was committed to help the country combat the pandemic. This was extensively debated in Parliament, in the budgets. And we've seen support for healthcare workers, public health measures and businesses. But aside from this, there's also other major moves. And if you were to recall, the repeal of Section 377A and the accompanying amendment to the Constitution to protect the traditional definition of marriage. And there was also the GST hike that was implemented. The bill was passed in Parliament in the first session, and there were other hotly debated issues like housing and the cost of living.
All right, all these things. When Parliament reconvenes on the 10th of April, President Halimah Yacob will then sum up policies, priorities and programs for the rest of the 5-year term. What can we expect when members reconvene?
Yeah, so, this recess is really for the government to sort of review its policies and programs over the past 2.5 years. And this, the second session, the agenda will be set out by President Halimah Yacob in her opening address on the 10th of April. So, to just give a sense of what this opening address could be like, we can take cues from the one that she did in 2018, when the second session for the 13th Parliament was convened. And she sort of painted the picture of what Singapore would be facing, the climate, it was the short-term challenges and the climate that it was sort of grappling. So externally was increasing competition. It also had and also grappling with an uncertain global climate. And internally at home, it was increasing demand, pressures on healthcare, social security systems, as well as inequality. And so she really mapped out the key points based on these challenges that she sort of explained. And these include, so some of the things that the Parliament sort of set out to work on was maintaining good relations with other countries, support for housing support, education support for those who need it the most. And so on 10th April, when we have her opening address, we'll sort of get a better sense of what the second session will kind of be like. She sets out these key priorities, and members are set to debate on these policies and programs. And this will traditionally happen about a week or so after the address.
So, Lauren, Parliament goes on a break until April the 10th, as we've been saying. But what else should we be keeping our eye out on for the coming weeks?
Well, two things. So if we were to take a look at the past 2 times Parliament went into recess, cabinet reshuffles were announced along with other political appointments. And so in the past 2 breaks, these changes happened within 2 weeks or 3 weeks from when the start of the recess. So it's perhaps apt to note that this break actually spans 2.5 weeks. So it's actually shorter than the convention compared to what it normally is, which is about a month, consistently over the past decade. And so It remains to be seen if there will be a cabinet reshuffle. The last time there was one was in June last year. We saw Deputy Prime Minister being promoted to the position he is in now. So secondly, we'll also see this midterm break also sets out, it's also a step towards closer to the next general election, and so which isn't due until late 2025. So this will kind of see when this will materialize. And looking at the trend of the past two elections, the parliament was dissolved as early as a year from when the second session was convened.
Well, Lauren, thank you very much for coming into the studios and breaking down the steps for us now that Parliament is going on this mid-break. Lauren Ong there, our reporter.